Hello and welcome to the second episode of From Me to We with Pastor and First G. I am First Gentleman Damion Parks Weekly, and this is my husband, my love, my boo thing, my big daddy, Pastor Romell Parks Weekly. So this week we kind of tossed back and forth topics, and we appreciate all of you that submitted topics and suggestions and had questions. Please continue to send those in. But we decided this week we would talk about threesomes.
Three, is it a crowd or is it company? And, we're trying to segment this thing, divide it up, organize it. And we found that really there are three different aspects that we really need to hit, on this subject. We talk about, bringing other people into the situation. There are many ways to look at it, and we really want to try to give some level of time to each one of those ways. So the first aspect, I don't really even call three. I kind of call multiple twos, multiple second persons,
right?
Because you're not actually bringing a third person into the two. Mm-hmm. You're just going out and getting a second person, and then you and the second person are doing something else while this second person is still here. So we generally think of that as open relationships. Open relationships manifest different ways. People, depending on the relationship, how they agree to have one, whether it's, people having to get permission first. I will use us as an example, because we have no relationship. So, if I have to come to get permission from him, or I have to introduce the person to him, he has to get to know them, or I have to let him know what I'm about to do. Some people just say, I don't even want to know. If you're going to do it, just do it, but don't tell me. Whatever dynamic people set up in their own specific relationship, open relationships don't always look the same from person to person. But ultimately, that's what I call the multiple twos, multiple second persons. But another element or aspect to this whole idea of threes, and three is really just an arbitrary number. It can be threes, fours, five, eights, nines, tens. Some of y'all, you know what I'm saying? 12, 14, 18, 20.
Got a headache.
So, but one of the other aspects of that is not just going out to another second person, but where you actually bring a third person into the sexual portion of the relationship. So with us being married, we bring somebody else in and have a third party involved in our sex life, whether it's one third party, period, or whether it's, just bringing somebody in randomly or at different points in time. It's a different person all the time. Like I said earlier, it's different for different relationships. But people do it. Mm-hmm. And then the third aspect of it is where it's not just another second person. You're not bringing a third person just in for sex and then they go back to what they're doing, but you actually have a third or a fourth or whatever number you have, other people involved in the relationship itself. Now, generally we call that polygamy, where it's a relationship that in the relationship itself, each person is involved in this covenant, in this commitment. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that's one of the more taboo aspects of relationships today, whether
Absolutely.
It deals with heterosexuals or homosexuals. But certainly we have a lot of these like Mormon shows on today that talk about, these many wives and the sister wives and things like that. So there are groups that engage in polygamy, but we just want to deal with it from a practical, Christian, but also Christian. We're always trying to weigh that practical with that biblical and spiritual. So we'll look at it from both of those aspects. One of the things that you will not have to expect from us is just to get a pat answer or a pat response to a subject that is worth more detail than that.
Absolutely.
Last week we were talking about monogamy, and we got into dating and people moving too fast, and we talked about, having sex too quickly and things. And I think about three people contacted us concerned. I'm going to say concerned. They just expressed some concern or questions regarding what we were actually teaching when it came to having sex. Mm-hmm. And, are you all saying it's okay to have sex before you're married? Well, we're not saying that, but we recognize the fact that while we're preaching ideals, people still do what they do.
Absolutely. And
we have to deal with the realities. We want this to be real and practical. And if I'm only dealing with ideals, I'm not giving you practical knowledge. We're not giving you, I'm a teacher, so I'm not just saying okay. We're not giving practical information to really help you in your relationship. So we'll deal with people having sex before they're married. But do we believe that that's God's best for you, that that's right? No, we don't. but we're not going to just throw a statement out there. We're going to offer an entire perspective and an entire episode to that topic. And this is not the episode, so we're not going to go into too much detail on it. But so rewinding that tape back to this idea of multiple twos, multiple second person. What do you think about that? He gonna do that to every single one of these. Okay.
Well, I understand that, when it comes to open relationships, I realize that there are some people who have thought, and to be honest with you, a few years ago, I really had the thought process of, okay, well, if the two people get together and you all have discussed that, whether it be just committed relationship or you actually are married, I used to feel like, okay, whatever works for you. If that's what it takes, then by all means, boo-boo, do you. I feel differently now. I think actually being married and being in a committed relationship and a marriage, it really has, it changed my perspective. I don't think it's a good idea because ultimately something is not going to go down right. And from a spiritual perspective, I understand that we are, we can look at examples in the Bible and those things of where we see where men had multiple wives and things like that. But, times have changed. I think things are different. It's just it's a real scary, I won't say scary, but it's a real complicated subject. Granted, if you even introduce the idea, you have to be, the two of you have had to discuss it. I just think it's too much work. I just do. I really think it's too much work. I think that a lot of times what happens in the open relationship is that when you have the understanding, some people say, oh, I don't want to know. Well, those that do want to know when your partner goes out with someone, then what happens on the times when you don't know? So when that comes up, how is that addressed or whatnot? That's cheating. I mean, it is what it is.
And if you don't want to know, why don't you want to know?
Why don't you want to know?
Is it not an open relationship, or are you just trying to do something out of sight, out of mind type thing where,
right.
If I just have to think about it. But if you were okay with it, why would thinking about it be a problem at all?
Right.
And one of the concerns that I would have with people who are considering having an open relationship is this. Rather than how do we do what works for us in terms of having an open relationship, look at why you need one in the first place.
Exactly.
What is it that is not satisfied in you in this relationship? And if this relationship is not providing what you need, do you need to figure out how to get it to provide what you need? Whether that involves therapy, whether that involves, going and buying some sex toys and getting kinky or playing role. But what is it that's causing you to need
something
to step outside
of it? Yeah, and here we go back to another topic that we'll have on later, which is communication. A lot of times when open relationships come about, you get the idea from, someone else that's done the same thing and they swear up and down that it was great for their relationship. But, listening to other people and trying to compare your relationship to theirs, number one, is not a good thing. But you want to talk about it. You want to discuss and say, hey, this is exactly what I feel like I'm missing, or this is what I'm craving, or whatever the case is. Because once you open the box of that opportunity, it's really hard to close that.
Very hard.
Without, some type of repercussions for it. And I think that's the thing that a lot of us don't really get. I don't think that people know what they're getting into when they go into open relationships.
Because it sounds so cool to think about it. Oh, I can get some DNA whenever I want, it, and we both cool with it, so that's cool. But when your relationship reaches a different level, and it's like that's not really what you're after, but now you've already set a pattern for the relationship. Mm-hmm. Has the other person got there as soon as you have? Right. And are you willing? No. Oftentimes, because you're two different individuals,
right?
And does the other person ever want to even get to that place? Right. Maybe they never want that, and you're like, okay, been there, done that, I'm moving on. But you've already established a pattern, and then it's like, well, it was okay at first. Why is it not okay now? And it's like, how much can you refute that? How can you really argue that when they have a legitimate point? I do want to just reiterate what we talked about in the previous episode. We're talking about like when you're actually in a relationship, right. And we've been dealing with the fact that people are calling relationships things that aren't really relationships. We're not talking about you're dating somebody 3 days and now you talk about we want to have an open relationship. That's not a relationship yet.
No. You're just two freaks that decided y'all were going to do what y'all want to do.
Exactly. Pretty much. So. You know, and you want to give somebody a title and to act like you were taking.
Yeah.
If Lord help me. If your cost is 3 days, you are too cheap.
Yeah.
Seriously. And you need to forget the other person. You need to value yourself more than 3 days, than 3 weeks. You know, I'm not trying to repeat last episode, but take it slow, get to know the person. Having said that, once you are in a relationship, then it's like, didn't you play enough field before you got in the relationship so that you don't need an open relationship? Exactly. But you still need an open relationship because you were in a relationship 2 weeks later. Mm-hmm. And so you never really got your fill because you went too fast in the first place.
Right. So speaking of going too fast, we'll just skip on to the bedroom. So yes, for most couples, it really, this whole threesome thing in the bedroom, it really doesn't work. There's just a number of things, or a number of reasons why it wouldn't work. It really can lead to an opportunity so let's say, hypothetically speaking, if you and I decide to have a threesome and we bring in a third person, well, what if the sexual chemistry between you and that third person, it seems to be a lot more intense. He pays more attention to you than he does to me, or you're paying more attention to him than you do to me. Then I get mad, I get jealous. There's the problem right there. The other thing about that is if one of the partners decides to see that person outside of the threesome and the second part of the party doesn't know, that here again there's other issues.
And it happens all the time.
It happens all the time. Yeah. And I'm going to say this now, those of you who are my friends and associates who I know that you've done this, I am not directly talking about you, but yes, I am using some of you as an example because you aren't the only ones. This has happened across the board with multiple people. And I can't tell you how many people I've had to inbox me or email me or say, hey, we tried this, we tried that. And I promise you 10 times out of 10, a lot of couples have tried the whole threesome thing. And from a sexual aspect, it just doesn't really work. Jealousy comes in. And then on top of all of that, you open the opportunity up for STDs to enter into your life. So, you want to be as discriminate and monogamous as possible, and for your relationship to make it healthy physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. I just think that who has that kind of energy, to be honest with you? I don't know about you, but I'll be 41 years old next month, and that doesn't make me like really old, but
between gay terms, you're ancient.
I know, right? As long as I don't look it. But but really and truly, if you really think about it, it takes a lot of energy to kind of keep up with that type of lifestyle. And I realize that a lot of people are not doing this every day, but it does take a lot of energy. I know mentally and emotionally, in addition to, but a lot of people think that it's just the physical aspect of it, and it's not. When you're in a marriage and you're in a relationship, there's more of you that comes out mentally and emotionally when you bring a third person in. We've just seen it happen over and over again. So I would say that here, between the two of us, if there ever is a question, we are saying to you that this is really not a good thing. You've got to figure out, get counseling, get therapy, from the spiritual. Don't just get it from a spiritual perspective. Get actual counseling, therapy sessions, especially as church members, church-going people. We're so afraid to go to a therapist. And honestly, there wouldn't be half as many pastors committing suicide and relationships breaking up like they do, gay, straight, or whatever, if we would just actually get therapy, get counseling, talk with someone, communicate better than what we've been doing. In order to get these things taken care of. And this opportunity is definitely one of them that I think that we could say to everyone that threesomes just don't work.
They really don't. You might find one in 20,000 that actually does, but do you want to play the odds with somebody that you actually want to spend the rest of your life with? Yeah. I mean, because while you're in a relationship, if this is not somebody that you're entertaining the prospect of this actually being a lifelong thing. So, to bring that into the spiritual angle, because, we talk about the practical, but there is a spiritual side to this too. When you have sex with someone, you become one with them.
Yes.
Yes. And it's one reason why you feel like, you're so little or you feel so broken. That's because pieces of your existence are all over the city. Mm-hmm. Because you just slept with everybody. Right. Okay? And you're not giving time for recovery to take place. Mm-hmm. before you hop to the next one,
Right.
because you're so hungry for affection and for love.
Right.
But so first of all, give time to get healed and get whole and pull yourself back from all these places, okay? But also, if you're talking about bringing this into a relationship, you are taking a part of yourself that belongs to someone else,
Right.
and giving it away.
Yep.
To somebody who's not even forget the polygamy part. This person is not committed to the relationship.
Right.
You're just bringing them in for sexual purposes.
Right.
So first of all, you're using them, okay? And well, if they okay with it, but you're still using them. It's called exploitation.
Right.
There's a reason they're okay with it, and you're taking advantage of that reason.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people who do prostitutes, people who do porn, whatever. In many cases, it's exploitative, but they chose to do it, yes. But you're still taking advantage of a situation,
Right.
taking advantage of an insecurity, taking advantage of a financial need, whatever the case may be. So the point is, you don't want to even open that door, because, like we said, when you open it, it's harder to close it.
It's harder to close.
And when you talk about the spiritual side, you're putting strain on the relationship that does not need to be there.
Right.
Life is going to put enough strain on a relationship. You don't need to add that to it.
And oftentimes, just to kind of close out for me, this is trying to fill an empty void. You've got to figure out a way to fill that void with your spouse without bringing in a third entity other than
The third.
Yeah. So, but that void is never going to be filled that way, because it's not. It really isn't. It's not Bible. It's not.
Did he go to church on us?
Yeah. It's not Bible. It's not. It's just not good. It's not a. I think that most people, if they're willing to be honest about it, there's an empty feeling after it's over with. I've heard some of you say, well, I'm still left unsatisfied. No, babe, you got satisfied. But it's an empty void that you're never really going to feel that way.
Yeah.
So.
And on the point of polygamy, of actually bringing a third person, not just in sexually, but a third or fourth person, other people into the relationship itself, this presents an interesting dynamic for same-sex couples, because in heterosexual couples generally, you're only going to, the people that are brought in are only going to be to the satisfaction of one person in the relationship. So if we have like one husband and 5 wives, well, they're pretty much all for the husband. Mm-hmm. Well, in the same-sex relationship, because there's attraction to the same sex and the same sex is being brought in, there's an opportunity for there to actually be, equality in the relationship, if you will. Theoretically,
right.
Where we're all involved in the all of the elements or aspects of the relationship. Now, that sounds good theoretically, sounds good on paper. Does it work out in real life? It doesn't. It's especially when you actually have a level of care, love, and concern for the person that you're with. Because, there's a passage in 1 Corinthians chapter 7 where Paul talks about God allowing us, even though he desires for us to just dedicate ourselves solely to him, he's willing to share us with the spouse because he realizes how real our sexual needs are. But it's interesting that God is willing to share us with a spouse, but yet if we have 2 and 3 and 4,
how is that?
Number one, do we have any time left for God? And usually he's on the back burner anyway.
Right.
But are we really giving enough time to these spouses? Are they giving enough time to us? Are we really being satisfied when we're divided up a million different ways? And can you really build a successful, strong relationship on that type of foundation? And like I said, theoretically, maybe, but for all practical intents and purposes, no. And we're trying to be real here.
Yeah.
No.
It doesn't work. So there we have it. To answer the question, 3. Crowd or company?
I think it's a crowd.
It's a crowd. So we look forward to our next topic and to speak with you guys on next week, fellowship with you. Keep the emails coming. We hope to see you on Facebook, the Judah First page. And that Facebook page is
Facebook.com/Judah First Ministries. We're on YouTube at YouTube.com/Judah First Ministries. We are also on our own website at www.judahfirst.com. threesomestalk.org. And you can also, share this video, comment on the video, comment on the YouTube page, on the Facebook, get the discussion going. Listen, these are the type of topics that need to be addressed in
Absolutely.
a real way. And we're trying to do that, but we can't do it alone.
Right.
We need that participation.
So we need you to share with your friends.
Absolutely.
Especially those that you don't have it all figured out, and they don't have it all figured out either. So we had a great conversation with a game night at our house this past Friday, and with some friends of ours, about 7 or 8 other people. And I think it was just amazing to me to see how it really, they watched last week's video, and how it just made everybody really think, and they're already looking forward to this video. So we hope that you'll share with your friends, take it to your game night and your party or whatever gathering at your house. And we'll see you all next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hello. This is a story about a man named Jed.
A poor mountaineer who barely kept his family fit.
And that's all I know.
And then one day he was shooting at some pool. And then up from the ground came a
bubbling crude. Yeah.
Oil, that is. Black gold, Texas tea.